election campaigns are never without surprises, but this week, the Informed in an exclusive can reveal that not only have concerns been expressed regarding the politicising of Victoria's public service and institutions like Victoria Police by the Andrews government, but school principals throughout the seat of Nepean have been caught out endorsing sitting member Labor MP Chris Brayne, which is a breach of education guidelines. One school principal even went as far as showing his support on a video. Well, everyone should be surprised, shouldn't we, or not? Joining us today, we've got the full crew on board. We've got Cheryl Ainsley, independent candidate for that seat of Nepean. We've got Ryan Smith, the Shadow Minister for Planning. We've got Mario Beeks, security consultant and author of the new book, What is the Price of Freedom? We've got John Heron, independent, solicitor and victims advocate, and also running for the upper house for the Darren Hinch Justice Party. We've got Caroline Council, one of Australia's leading law practitioners. We've got Jack Curran, if anyone can, Jack Curran, who's our citizen's voice. And of course, we've got the well-known Ian Cook, who's running as an independent candidate in the seat of Mulgrave. Welcome, team.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, Cheryl, let's kick off with you, seeing as this is happening in your backyard. Is this just more of the same? At what point does integrity become a non-negotiable?
Look, the people of Nepean are really upset about this. It is just shocking. I've got people come out to me every day saying, how is this allowed? You've got to do something. And I said, I'm going to try to do whatever I can. But it just shows that some politicians are willing to do whatever it takes to get elected, like whatever it takes. We saw it with the kids in the under-12 basketball team a couple of weeks ago. They all got in trouble. And the thing that I find really interesting about this particular one is that the principals know that they're not allowed to do it. One of the principals actually, not one of the offenders, but one of the other principals actually emailed me and said that they know they have to be politically impartial. So it's not like they didn't know. And even if we look back at the federal election, you know, not that long ago, the CEO of Guide Dogs Victoria, she actually had to stand down because she actually endorsed Josh Frydenberg. So it's not like it's a new thing, you know, and it seems like our Labor candidate down here is willing to put our principals, key figures in our communities, jobs on the line for his job. So the people down here are furious. Yeah, it's really worrying, to be honest.
Now, Ryan, I'm going to throw to you. We keep seeing these indiscretions, transgressions, whatever you want to call them. It just seems to be no comeuppance, no penalty for it until after the fact when the advantage has already been gained.
Yeah, and there won't be unless there's a change of government. In fact, things will only get worse. And, you know, I guess it's a validation of everything Ian's been saying for a number of years now. And I guess you can be, you know, feel okay that it's not just you. It's actually everywhere. This government uses publicly appointed figures to further their own cause at every single point. I mean, the instruction's pretty clear. Public sector employees, including school employees, must not advocate for or against the current government, particular political parties or candidates. I mean, it's as clear as it can possibly be. And Cheryl's completely right. I mean, were we to win government at the end of this month, what's the relationship going to be between government and these four principals who have gone out so loudly? It's a cancer in our public service. It's a cancer in the government. It's got to change. It's not going to change at all. In fact, it's going to get worse if these guys win again.
Yeah,
I agree with.
Sorry, go on, eh?
I agree with Ryan, and the thing that would bother me most is that this is just a symptom of a far wider illness through the public service. The corrupting of the public service, the politicisation of it. I mean, there was a time when senior public servants gave ministers advice without fear or favour. That's out the window. They now tell them what they want to hear. And when you get down to the level of principals, where principals are now endorsing the current government because it suits them, yeah, you have a really big problem. And even, you know, Ryan, even if you get in and you get government, unless you've got a bloody big axe, this is going to take a long time to fix.
I agree, and you've got to find people to fill these roles too. But it's just hard to even comprehend the magnitude of it all. I mean, we've got now just a whistleblower saying again that the red shirts investigation was stopped. So you've clearly got political influence within Victoria Police, which is just incredibly disturbing. You know, virtually every integrity body head is a Labor appointee. I mean, full credit to the Ombudsman, Deborah Glass, and to Redlick in the IBAC, but he's on his way out. I mean, I can only imagine who's going to be appointed to head up IBAC if Labor stays in power.
Mm.
Yeah, it reminds me, years ago, my cousin works in the Queensland Public Service, and when Campbell Newman was threatening to take the axe, they were all called in large meetings and told that if they don't vote for Anna Blight's government at that time, that they would all lose their jobs. Okay, so that was now the difference. There's a slight difference between that and now. That what you need to know if you've worked for the regime is that it might appear that these school principals are acting under orders. The fact is we're at a stage where they're actually not. This is where this like hardline groupthink comes into play, right? So basically what those principals done, they haven't had a nod from the office, I would say, of that MP, but they know to curry favour for themselves and to further their own position. This is how totalitarian regimes work. Mario would know this, right? So that they don't necessarily work where you're all told in the room like my cousin was. It goes that they've got to think the same way. It's a bit of a 1984 Big Brother stuff, right? You know, the group think. So this is why they're actually doing that. This is going on everywhere now, from what I've seen, right? It's court, well, I'm in trouble here, but certainly, yeah, the police force, security forces, justice system, corrections, you name it. You go through it over and over and over and again, and it's down to who they employ, who they won't employ now, all through top. Then it's top to bottom. It's in the olden days, it might have been a little bit of push and shove with the executives, but it is top to bottom. Anyone that speaks out against this knows now, like any totalitarian regime, they're finished. I deal with unfair dismissals by the bucket loads from the government, and a lot of them, if they didn't use the right pronoun or they didn't curry favour with someone, they're out.
Mm. You were actually marched out of your own office at one stage too, John.
Exactly, for bringing an action against my for negligence over the death of my daughter, and I was out on the street in an hour. My desk cleared and put in a plastic paper and a garbage bag, right? My daughter's photographs, because I dared to do that.
Mm.
Right.
Mario, you would have seen this before with the regime.
No, not this magnitude. This is beyond my understanding comprehension. John's explained very well. It's totalitarian regime, and you have the authorities and everything else. However, even the communist system, and you saw in the Xi Jinping on a big, the committee, they're escorting people who they don't need anymore, so they're sending the message. What's happening in Australia, or particularly Victoria, it is like those 2 years of lockdowns. I can do whatever I want. It is just continuity of what they did. But one thing everybody agree with me, we're going to say now, doesn't matter Labor wins or doesn't win. Unsatisfaction is going to brew. It's going to be unrest somehow, somewhere. That's how the totalitarian regimes ends in. But at this very stage, this is beyond communism. This is pure sadistic behavior. That's what I'm going to call. I can do whatever I want. I can do whatever I want, and nobody can do nothing to me. So.
It's 1984.
And Mario, that's already happened, because there are criminal charges that have been brought against individuals for speaking out online, in particular during the lockdowns, against the current government. So I'm aware of people that have been charged and have been sentenced as a result of speaking out. We actually have no freedom of speech. It's not enshrined anywhere, if you will, in relation to our legislative state. The one observation, Michael, I want to make are in those two words, public service. Doesn't say government service, it says public service. They are meant to be the interface between us, the public, and the government. And for this to have happened, it really is totalitarianism at its worst.
Yeah. Jack, how would you feel if your kids came home from school indoctrinated with this sort of stuff?
Well, first, I would approach the teachers and the principal and be very diplomatic, and then I'd start throwing chairs. You're asking probably the wrong bloke. I've got European background. I don't take lightly to pronouns. I don't take lightly to, and I keep on going back to, and I'm the citizen here, and I keep going back to our morals and what's at the kitchen table at the moment. I think the public speaking at the moment is not what it is at the current table. At my table, it's pretty different. We understand pronouns. We understand that we are who we are and where we came from, and that God built this country from Europeans. And yeah, I will also talk about the First Nations people that were also indoctrinated without their will. So there's a lot of people doing things without against their will at the moment. But politics is politics. Schools, from my perspective, I'd be putting teachers back to school and getting them to be re-educated in terms of their own education, because who tests the teachers? Who tests the principal? There's no tests in place.
Right.
There's no structure to say you're good enough. CEOs get elected because of the way that they have, their past experiences, their experiences. Daniel Andrews, he came out of school. What does he know? What do the teachers know? We need people to go into a system that have experience. That we need CEOs to take the whole state of Victoria and turn it upside down. We talk about cancer. We talk about corruption. We talk all about that. But who's the surgeon that's going to surgically remove the cancer? Who's the person that's going to do that? We've got no one at the moment sorry, Mayor. No, we've got no one at the top to do that. And I know the answer is us. You're right, Mario. I was coming to that. It's the people. Once the people are awoken, then you'll see the difference.
Can I just add on this one, on this political party, because it's like this is resemblance of communism. In communism, you never have on a power people who are educated, who has the qualities, has the morals and ethics. The leaders, so-called in communism, always surrounded themselves with the people who are being easily shaped, molded, and utilized for the cause what they need for. And that's seen in Victoria, right? The majority of these people, like, it's just a yes man, and this is what worries me. There's no quality. There's no politicians like you guys. You know what I mean? Michael Ryan.
I'll finish off on that. Yes, you're right. The people are. Let me just point out one. When the Lions come out, and I'll just point back when the union boys came out and went to the union boss and stood up, that's when the Lions came out. So up until that point, we haven't reached that point. So when the Lions come out, then we'll flip. At the moment, everyone's asleep. I'll end it on that.
And
just to add to what Jack says, so two things pop into my mind as I listen to Jack. One is the saying that if you sleep in a democracy, you will wake in a dictatorship. So the other one that pops into my head straight away for Jack is there will be no justice until the unaffected are as outraged as the affected. And all of these, and they're wonderful sayings. At the end of the day, we do have to wake Victoria up. And look, we're doing our bit here in Mulgrave. Every weekend we are out in shopping centres. Interestingly enough, I don't know whether you guys knew it, that Brandon Park Shopping Centre has never let a politician campaign in the centre until I turned up. And they've allowed me and given me a stall in the centre whenever I wanted.
great stuff. Now, these rules that are around elections are there for a reason. And believe it or not, I've just received an email about my corflutes. Apparently, you're only allowed to have 5 corflutes and 5 A-frames in the area. So I'm being pulled up for that. And then stuff like this is going on.
Hey, Michael, sorry, just correct. You've been told you can only have 5 corflutes.
In our that's a council ruling, not a VEC.
VEC.
I've had Michael in one estate that I've had. I had one person had 2 corflutes, so they could see it from each way of driving down. and I've been told to remove one. I'm only allowed to have one.
So the question to all of you, rather than Michael as well, do you know how this gets reported? Do you know who does this? And I saw this for the first time in election. Ryan would know this. The ALP run around and check up on every candidate's advertisements and pulls you up with the local council as well. There's if it's anything near a council land or something, they'll drag it down, and they go straight to the AEC and report on you. Right? We in the seat of McEwen, we had a court case because the Liberal Party put up amusing photographs of the candidate in his real life 16-stone persona, along links to Daniel Andrews, and they went to court that morning over that. The ALP did, and got it taken down. That's just how it operates. They're just one long extension of a regime.
Yeah. Well, I think I've fixed the problem because I've removed the ones they said I should remove and placed them right next to the Labor candidates who are numbering at 16 at the moment that I've counted. So I'm happy to remove it back to 5 if she does as well.
Michael, can I just back onto the topic of these principles? I just want to say something as a single mum with a 2.5-year-old going to be in this school system really soon. And I'm really concerned as a mum that if these principals are willing to put these comments out in writing and in videos out into the public space, what is happening in our schools and where am I going to put my child? I do not want them to be, like, it's my responsibility to bring them up and for them to be able to think logically, and they'll make their own, or he'll make his own decision when he gets older. But the thing is if it's happening so blatantly and they don't seem to bat an eyelid in doing it, how is that filtering through into the classroom? You know, and it really, really, for me as a single mum, is a real worry.
Well, I can tell you now, Sherelle, because it actually reminds me of the bad old days when religious leaders felt free to tell their flocks how to vote. And so if it permeated your Sunday, it also permeated the religious school attached to the church or to the synagogue or whatever. Same things would be happening in our public schools as well.
Yeah,
exact same thing, which shouldn't be happening.
The other thing, Cheryl, should you be successful, and I really hope you are, how do you have a working relationship with these schools?
Well, it's really interesting. One of the principals I'd actually met, and he'd given me 15 minutes. I'll be generous, I'll say 15 minutes. You know, wasn't even really engaged, did it to tick a box, really. And then within days, the video came out where he was endorsing the Labor candidate. And to be honest, it kind of was a bit of a knife. So it's going to be a real rebuilding of the relationship, you know, if or when I get elected. But it's just not just me, it's any candidate that's in this election. You know, if I'm not successful, any other candidate that's not the Labor candidate is going to have a real struggle to work with these principles. And it's so fundamentally important that we do.
Yeah.
Well, let me assure you, from my point of view, it's the principal is going to be having to rebuild the relationship because the MP, if it's not a Labor one, is the one who's going to be, you know, the school needs the MP more than the other way around. Let me assure you.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, like I've always been aware of the partisan and divided nature that Victoria's become over the last few years. But the anger at anyone wanting to change things. So if you're not Labor, you're the devil. And if you know, we're not trusted, the number of questions I field as to who I'm going to give their votes to and trying to explain to them I can't, that's up to you. The distrust that's now sown and the anger that is palpable. And we could all agree I'm a likable bloke. But gee, some of the vitriol that's come out, it's just frightening.
Yeah. You should see the sort of comments that Nicole Werner in Box Hill, as a young woman of Asian descent, she gets, you know, that she's just a token for the Liberal Party. You know, there's some pretty vile stuff that's been posted on her. You know, our opponents say we don't have enough women and multicultural background. Yet when we get one, they rip her to shreds every day.
Something that Sherelle said too, and my experience in the last federal election, is that I didn't get any invites to any schools etc. I got one for a local council out of the 5 that was in the electorate. The other the Liberal candidate, who's a really good guy, Richard Welsh, also told me that he only got invites to 1 council meeting. Right? So that sort of leads to another thing too, that and the same with the AEC. The AEC was all over him for anything. Now, where did that come from? That came from the Labor Party. So they tended to leave me alone a little bit. But the climate, this is another thing with the totalitarian regimes. They operate in a climate of impunity because the authority, when you got the authorities and the security forces in your pocket, there's just no problem there at all in actually cracking down on people. That's another way how it manifests itself. So all of these people, like the Labor Party operatives running around informing the AEC in councils where your posters are, etc. There's no comeback on them, right? The final thing I'd like to say is more like I remember Mary Ann Thomas again. One of the things that the Labor Party's realised is that they're playing a small target campaign. So there's no town hall meetings from, I don't know, Sherelle, have you had that?
Well, I've actually got the Mornington Peninsula show has been really good down here. We're actually holding a forum tonight, and candidates are all welcome, which is good.
So where we did that in the federal election, and our local Labor guy struggles to string a sentence together, not unusual, but there's absolutely no forums anywhere in our area because they don't want to be publicly pulled down, and they're playing a below the radar campaign.
I've got my forum tonight. Anyone who's in the area, Buninyong Town Hall, Labor, Paul Tatchell, the other independent, Nicola Reid, and the Greens are there, and with an apology from the Animal Justice Party. But we've had a few extra independents pop up, I think, on the VEC website. I'm not sure if they'll be attending, but this is a matter for the Education Department to take these principals to task, surely.
That's a thing, Michael, is that John was just saying that there's no accountability. I know I probably beat on about this, but I reported to the VEC, the person the group that is governing our elections about the no authorisation of the Labor Party and they're in effect paying for votes. And they still haven't ruled on it. And the polls open, early voting starts on Monday. Now, there are going to be potentially candidates, Labor candidates that are elected who have broken the rules. And what's the penalty? We can't have another election. We're not going to kick them out. So what? They just go ahead and do it. They get away with it.
Yeah, the Public Service Commissioner is supposed to be looking after this stuff, but I was dealing with him back at the last election. They were reasonably responsive, but I don't think they're responding to much now.
They've called me. I got a call from the director of the electoral integrity, area, encouraging me not to promote it. But I said, well, in all due respect, it needs to come out before the polls open. But they've also said that they need to make sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's, or whatever they said, to make sure they can get a prosecution. Well, get moving. I reported this over 5 or 6 weeks ago. Get moving. We need an answer.
It's not going to, Sherelle. I promise you, and I don't want to sound negative. Look, there's lots of positive stuff when I'm out in my electorate and talking to people, but on what you're talking about, there is no motivation for these people to do the right thing. There is no motivation, I promise you, to prosecute anyone in this current government.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ian, but I think it's going to change, guys, when you win. What I'm seeing in Victoria, what's happening actually, as Michael says, it's hitting on the small guys. They want people not to go to election. That's what they wanted to do. Don't go into election because everybody's angry and pissed off and everything else. So, the Labor with the handful of these voters, going to represent majority. People should go to vote. People should be standing there next to the voting booths, and like what happened in US now. People are standing there and they say, where is my vote? How can somebody vote for me? People should go for election and put their vote for you guys to change the difference. And once when the tide is changed, everybody who was stopping you is going to come to you and be whistleblower. Mark my words. That's going to happen.
I hope you're right, but it's hard for me to understand how anyone's voting for a guy who's got 5 anti-corruption commission investigations on him, that there's questions being raised about his integrity and honesty on matters that have happened in the past. I mean, what has to happen for this guy to lose voters? I mean,
you know what?
What's happened though, Ryan? The sad thing is, being considered a savvy, good political operator is somebody who can skirt the rules. That's seen as a positive somehow, a way to get round
it's
not
so
the
blatant.
actual rules, but the intention of the rule.
It used to be all spun. It's just blatant now.
Yeah, Michael, what Ryan was talking about before, and I would lay it out in these terms, is that what we saw on the front page of the Herald Sun was that the Premier actually lied about how this kid hit his car. The evidence is clear. You can't get any more compelling than what we see. The boy then said that his only memory of the event was the Andrews arguing over him. The woman who helped him said that neither Daniel Andrews or his wife offered assistance. So you had the Premier of this state looking down at a boy who is dying, literally dying, okay? And did he see a dying boy? Did he see compassion? No, he saw a political problem. When I read all of this, I got wild. I looked at that boy and the photos of him in hospital. He looked like my son. I can't tell you the emotion that gets in me when I read, when I read and see this stuff. I know what he's done to my family. I know what he's done to my business. This is beyond the pale. If Victorians re-elect this guy, we will have something. In fact, I spoke to a priest the other day. He went through all of this with me, which he abhorred the way Andrews handled it. But he also said to me, which I thought was fairly powerful, Daniel Andrews evicted Christ from Victoria during the lockdowns by closing the churches. And he said he and his congregation will never forgive him for it.
I hope that's true.
When the populace needed that the most.
Absolutely.
All right, we've got to wind it up. We're running out of time. Ryan, you've got a massive lead in your seat. What are the well, I'd like to think you do, because you work hard and you're a great representative of your community. What are your issues at the moment that you're hearing that you think?
Top one, 100% is integrity in government, and that's just overwhelming. Even, I know in other seats there's cost of living issues and the health issues, but in my seat it is integrity issues. I think a lot of the residents, certainly not all, but a lot of them are largely shielded from these, they've got private health cover, or they've got, they send their kids to private schools or whatever, but they are very concerned about the lack of integrity from this government, the dishonesty, the lack of transparency, and the arrogance from Daniel Andrews. That is the unprompted top of mind thing that people come to me about.
What about you, Cheryl? What's happening down in Nepean for you?
Look, I think a lot of what Ryan's saying there is that people are sick of the corruption. They're sick of the lies. But unfortunately, Ryan, for you, people are really excited to have an independent. They're really excited. When I say that I'm independent, they're really excited to have another option. So for me, that's really uplifting. And I think that hopefully that pays off in the next couple of weeks.
And John, with a Darren Hinch Justice Party?
I'm neck deep every week in people coming to me that have had issues with the Office of Public Prosecutions, police, and that's all I can focus on. I've got people telling me, I was on television on Monday night with the Forrest family about the 3 people burnt alive in Point Cook, how they're dealing with the government. I have people calling me, seeing that, saying, you got to help me. There's no one help me. And the final thing, a friend of mine in Sydney said, he rang me up last night and said, isn't there some sort of victim support unit of the government that can help these people out? We're living here and we're going, no way. That's what I'm flat out with.
But there are 90 people in the Premier's PR social media team.
Yeah, we had who was the last victims of crime? Greg Davies, I think, former policeman. That was a man who knew how to work for victims of crime before.
No, so with this flat out, because there's no government agency. And again, like the police dealing in the courts this week, there's trainee judges and magistrates that make rulings in front of me and they don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they got there. I better stop on that one, Carol.
Mario, what are you hearing in Sydney? What's the perception of Victoria at the moment?
Look, I that I have utmost respect to all of you guys there. And truly, first of all, I would like to say thank you for being the voice for the people of Victoria, for those who are really, really oppressed. And I can say this clearly, it's oppression over there. And look, in Sydney, it's laughing, what we're seeing, what's happening there, but one premier can do what he can do. Because we know we have the track record in New South Wales with the premiers who've been removed for the bottle of the wine, as you all know, you know. And Victoria, we have the premier who has a 5 anti-corruption, investigations and still running for premier. Look, it's a laughable, but simultaneously it is worrying sign for the future is coming. Yeah.
And Caroline, what are you hearing? You're out in the.
Look, I'm just a humble voter, but I'm going to go to the polls and definitely use that power. But look, I'm in John's electorate, and there are problems with the incumbent. I'm afraid, the incumbent's going to get back in, I suspect. But God, we've got to give it a run for the money.
And Ian, in your electorate, apart from the obvious, the bleeding obvious integrity, what's next on the list?
No, actually, that's interesting. Yes, so corruption and integrity are important. The one that I'm getting, and I'm mainly getting it from women, grandmothers and mothers, and literally they are coming to the campaign office to see if they can see me and talk to me about it, is the indoctrination through safe schools and the transgender legislation. That is absolutely putting the fear of God into mothers. And one grandmother came in the door and she said they had a young child that had gone into prep, was coming back. Like she went through a phase of not wanting to talk to mum and dad, all of a sudden being disengaged, not happy and bright anymore. And she said, finally, she came out with it, and she said that the granddaughter told the grandmother, I'm a girl in a boy's body, and they told me at school that was what that's why I was unhappy. The kid was, I think, 6. I think
Ian, there's actually this, because we have to deal with transgender children all the time at the family law coalface. There is a huge controversy around the statistical information that was gathered to justify the drug regime to suppress puberty. There is a huge controversy brewing on the world stage that was all skewed deliberately. But watch this space, because I think we're going to suddenly wake up and realise that we've made horrific errors in that area.
Yeah.
In other words, going through puberty can actually rationalise and literally change the direction of the thinking of that child. So by suppressing puberty, all you're doing is potentially creating massive physical problems for that individual later on, osteoporosis being one of the big ones, because that's the side effect of those blockers. Puberty blockers are not warranted, are not justified, and is in fact preventing the individual from working through sexual identity. This is hugely controversial because of the amount of money that's been invested by the pharmaceutical companies in relation to the puberty blockers.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, Caroline, these mothers mothers and grandmothers that have specifically come to talk to me about these issues and what I would do about it. And I must say that my kids went through school, I never had any of this, and they're in their 30s now. I because of my age and because I've now got grandchildren that are now coming up and to go through the school system, I'm absolutely horrified by these stories people are telling me. When you actually look at this Safe Schools program, it's more of an indoctrination or a grooming program. It is disgusting. God, if you or I had done that, we'd be in jail.
Yeah. All right. And in my electorate of Eureka, the standard integrity's big, but it's integrity in politics as a whole, but mainly focused on Dan Andrews, and it's a feeling like we've been ignored in the West. We just had our funding for our aquatic centre removed because the Labor government, federal government, decided to scrap the Building Better Regions fund. I think there are 815 applications in for that. Our pool had a $15 million fund in it. We're now the largest single area, over 22,000 without access to an indoor pool. Our roads are the next big one. So, you know, nothing's going to change. We see the promises being thrown at Melton now that they realise, gee, we better start paying attention. Hopefully they'll realise that Eureka isn't just a pimple on the backside of Melton, and pay us some attention. So we'll close that down and we'll reconvene for next week, a couple of weeks out from the election. So Ryan, Sherelle, John, Mario, Caroline and Ian, hopefully everyone except for Caroline and Mario will be sitting on one of those benches after the 26th.
I
Thanks,
think
guys.
most of us will be on pre-poll at 9 o'clock next Thursday, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we may have to reconvene.
3 weeks.
Yeah, we'll do a post-election.
No,
Yes.
You
All
beat
right.
me to it.
Thank so much, team.
bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. See you, Michael.